Today on Forecast Lab, an atmospheric river extends across Texas into the southeastern U.S., and conditions are going downhill once again on the west coast. The world's hotspot today, Drift, and if you look at that name, you might think of a violin, and indeed that is correct. That's Afrikaans for violin. Well, they are located in the Kalahari Desert near the border with Namibia, and they're up to 116 degrees. The world's cold spot, once again, Dalyankir. That's in Siberia, minus 56, the coldest place actually outside of Antarctica. And I'm thinking we need to start a Dalyankir fan club. How does that sound? And we were talking about this place last week. Where is that? Well, some people pointed out that it looked like Montana. And that is correct. That is the town of Loma, Montana. Back in 1972, they had the largest 24-hour temperature change. The temperature rose from minus 54 Fahrenheit to 49 above. That's a change of 103 degrees. And if you go to this link, you can read all about it. Temperature record there at Loma, Montana. Some interesting information in there. Okay, let's head to today's weather. There's what conditions look like this evening. An occlusion moving through the northeastern U.S., triple point in the Delmarva, and a cold front extending through North Carolina into southern Georgia. And we do have some MCS activity going on there in the southeastern states. A ridge across parts of the southern and central plains, and downslope conditions taking hold once again in Wyoming and Montana. Down to the south, we've got this other system embedded in the southern stream, bringing some disturbed weather to the Davis Mountains, the Big Bend, and the Pecos River Valley. And further out to the west, here comes the next big weather system with an associated atmospheric river. Here's the integrated vapor transport for this morning. That's the next atmospheric river heading into Washington, and as we go through the day today, higher amounts spreading into the Astoria and Portland area. This location right here, that's going to be the band of 600 to 700 IVTs. And as we go forward through the evening hours and into tomorrow morning, that spreads into the north part of California and into the eastern Oregon deserts. Then we get the next shot coming in on late Friday. Initially, we start with IVTs around 300, but you can see those ramping up with some fairly high values training across San Francisco into the central Sierras. And we do have blizzard warnings in effect for much of the Sierras. Now, typically what we've seen most of this past winter has been winter storm warnings in the Sierras. So taking that up to blizzard conditions, that's definitely a step up. And there's a very high likelihood that the impacts in the Sierras will be extreme. The mid-tropospheric chart, 500 millibars, does show a series of large, long waves across the North American continent, a ridge across the Rockies, a trough offshore, and another trough through the Great Lakes region with an associated Hudson Bay vortex. And slinking eastward beneath that ridge is this cutoff low in Arizona, which has an associated surface weather system, and that will open up over the next 24 hours as that moves eastward. The water vapor imagery for the U.S. does show two major waves. One moving into the northeastern U.S., you can see that S shape on the back of that area of cloudiness, and another S shape there in Texas indicating another strong shortwave. And there's the cutoff low there in Arizona, and further up to the northwest, the next Pacific weather system moving inland. There is, of course, a lot of precip associated with this shower activity. We can see earlier this morning we had lots of thunderstorm activity in West Virginia and Kentucky. It's died off a little bit, some very heavy showers there in Virginia, but another convective cluster up there around Watertown, moving up towards Ottawa, and that does have some lightning activity within that. Those positive symbols that you see here and there, those are going to be lightning strikes detected by the GOES GLM sensor. Not very much to see below the cloud field, although there is some indication of a dry slot moving across the eastern Great Lakes. That shows up initially right there with that area of clear skies, and we get that transition as we go to the north, getting more into a cold core weather regime, producing some of that convective activity in Quebec. And on the backside, lake effect showers, lake effect snows and clouds, those are getting going across all of Michigan and sweeping into Ohio and the lower part of Ontario as well. And there's a look at the infrared imagery, and that's pretty good at discriminating between the warm conveyor belt associated precip and the cold core stuff further up to the north. And we can peruse the surface map, and that does show the rich dew points up into the 50s there around Burlington, Vermont, Saranac Lake. And we do have extensive wind advisories from Maine across New Hampshire, wind gusts up to 55 miles an hour, and also lake effect snow warnings from south of Oswego into the Syracuse and Utica area that runs through tonight and tomorrow. Could be 3 to 6 inches of snow in that location right there. Winter weather advisories around that lake effect snow warning area, and we got wind advisories all down the Appalachians. And you can see the leading edge of that cold front right there, dividing the higher dew points, 50s, temperatures in the lower 60s, from the strong westerly winds, the colder temperatures, and the lower dew points, of course. And as we go into the southeastern states, we get more into a convective weather regime. This loop starts about 8 in the morning and progresses through the morning hours. Extensive thunderstorms and showers moving eastward, now moving into South Carolina, past Atlanta. You can see that lightning activity has tapered off a little bit. Nevertheless, the region is under a moderate risk of severe weather that extends all the way up to New York and all the way down into North Carolina and parts of the southern Appalachians. High wind is really about the only significant threat. And we also see the appearance of extensive subtropical cirrus, the presence of the subtropical jet. Well, that's going to stretch out the photographs, increase the bulk shears, and somewhat increase the probability of severe weather, although we're not really expecting a whole lot of that. And we do have wind advisories in the mountains for the post-frontal winds, the stronger gradient following that front, and most of those will expire tonight. In the southern plains, I don't know how many of you followed the news, lots of smoke and wildfires. It just went crazy last night. Let's take a look at the satellite imagery. And it was already a very windy day, strong southwesterly winds ahead of the Canadian cold front. And you can see those black marks up there in the panhandle. Those are wildfires. And as the front approached from the north, we got this very strong wind shift, and you can see those really fanned the flames as the winds peaked and shifted. And with that wind shift, the fire was able to come into contact with new fuels. And we saw things really fan, and you probably heard about the Pantex nuclear processing plant. They had some problems there last night. Anyway, that's how it looked on the satellite imagery. Well, nothing like that today. Typically, when we have that kind of mess in the panhandles, it's due to a strong lee side low. Pressures like down to 29.20, 29.30 in southern Colorado, and you get that very strong southwesterly flow behind the dry line, and those winds really whip up in West Texas. Well, today we've got northerly flow back behind that cold front, which has pushed all the way down towards the Gulf Coast and into northern Mexico, and the tail end of that boundary linking up with this other system there in southern Arizona, thunderstorms from Tucson out to Ajo. I'll cover that in a little bit when we touch up on the southwestern U.S. But the main baroclinic zone located right there near the Big Bend, and that's where we would expect to find a new low-pressure system developing. Will we get that? Well, we'll take a look at the model charts shortly. Then in the northern plains, not much to look at. A couple of tracks of old snow on the ground across North Dakota and southeastern South Dakota near Yankton. Red flag warnings for tomorrow in central Nebraska from Broken Bow to O'Neill due to strong southwesterly winds expected. And we've got high wind warnings as we go west into Wyoming. Those are mostly for the Front Range Mountains, west of I-25 and in the interior near Casper. Heading out to the southwestern U.S., well, we've got that system that I just talked about that is producing some cold rain in Marfa and Alpine. Temperatures drop to 34 with strong wet bulbing. But man, there in Arizona, let's take a look at that. Let me pull up the sector for southern Arizona. And we can see that with those steep lapse rates near that cold core low, we really get a lot of thunderstorm activity out there around Tucson, Sells, Ajo, and all along the border with Mexico. Very spectacular. Let's take that a little further north. Yeah, it's hard to get a good sector on that, but that's how it looks. Not really a whole lot of activity heading into Phoenix, but let's check the radar. And there it is, quite a bit of shower and thunderstorm activity. That's going to be Tucson right there. So it looks like right now most of the precip has moved into the mountains east and north of town. And another cluster spreading up there towards Casa Grande and back towards maybe Ajo. In California, things are deceptively nice. Clear skies all up and down the San Joaquin Valley. Offshore, we're getting that rare phenomena where you see trails from ships. And that's due to the pollutants coming from the ships depositing nuclei into a very humid air mass. And it just happens to show up where the satellite picks that up. So you get these streamers all through that marine layer. Anyway, there's our next system coming in from the northwest. And there's all the warnings we have for California. This is a blizzard warning, which runs late Thursday through Sunday morning. That affects mostly above 5,000 feet, but those snow levels will be coming down to 1,500 feet by Saturday. And we've also got high wind watches for Saturday covering this area right here. That includes Las Vegas, Laughlin, Pahrump, and the northeastern California deserts. Could be wind gusts up to 65 miles an hour. And there is our big weather system moving through the northwestern U.S. This is sort of a northwesterly flow situation linking up with an atmospheric river coming out of the tropical Pacific. And that's going to spread onto the west coast and move down into California over the next couple days. For today, though, atmospheric river spreading into Oregon, and we have the potential for 48-hour precip to run about 3 to 5 inches in the mountains and 1 to 1.5 inches in the valleys. And here's a look at the forecast precip from now through early Friday from the National Weather Service. These are the official forecasts, and you can see about 1.3 in Seattle, 1.6 in Portland, and much higher amounts in the mountains. So with the cold temperatures in the mountains, that's going to come down as snow. And 5 inches of rain, that's quite a bit. So you can imagine with snow, you're going to be measuring snowfall in feet instead of inches. And as we look further down the coast, well, this is going to be 3 inches through early Friday. If we take this on through late Saturday, 7.4 inches in Truckee. So you can only imagine what that is in terms of snowfall. And there is our big weather system heading into the northwestern U.S., a long, extensive cold front with significant cold air advection, which is supporting very strong troughing in the upper levels. In occlusion in the Gulf of Alaska, and then heading up into Alaska and Canada itself. There's the weather map in that area. Cold air filtering down from Manitoba and Ontario into the Great Lakes region. Not very much coming down into the plains. And checking out the Atlantic and Europe, very stormy in the British Isles. A similar situation as the northwestern U.S. with strong cold air advection offshore. However, the atmosphere is quite a bit warmer, so the snow confined mostly to the Norwegian Sea. And this other, I don't know if that's a cutoff low or a southern stream system, but there it is near Sardinia and Algeria, moving across the Mediterranean. All right, so let's take a look at the forecast, looking at the precipitable water, and you can see dry advection moving into the northeastern U.S., but we hang on to quite a bit of moisture in the Gulf Coast region. So there's one surge for Friday and another surge for next Monday. And these surges seem to get stronger and stronger as we get into later next week. This one here, that could support severe weather in parts of the Midwest. That's 1.5 inch of precipitable water into Illinois, with 1 inch all the way to Green Bay and Minneapolis. And we can also look at things in terms of upper air dynamics. How many channels give you Q vectors? Well, let's see how things roll along going into tomorrow. This little couplet comes out of the southwestern U.S., upward motion coming into Texas there for early tomorrow morning. And in the northeastern U.S., quite a bit of troughing, but most of the motion appears to be subsident. All right, and yeah, more upper lift coming into southwestern Oregon and northern California. So yeah, different places to look at around the U.S. As we go into later Thursday and Friday, that's where we get that winter weather system in California. Stronger dynamics coming inland, looks like later Friday in Northern California, but one of the big factors will just be that persistent atmospheric river across that region right there during the entire period. So it doesn't take much upper level lift to get that going. But that's going to be the big kahuna there for Friday night into Saturday, probably some locally intense snowfalls in the Sierras and into the Great Basin area. And just quickly, here's a look at those total snowfalls. This is going to be in inches from today through late Saturday. You can see most of the higher amounts in the mountains. The northern Cascades getting about 60 to 90 inches of snow. That's going to be about 5 to 7 feet. And going down into the Sierras, that's where we pick up some huge amounts. 108 inches forecast around Lassen Peak. What's 108? That's 9 feet. Truckee, 82 inches. That's going to be about maybe 7 or 8 feet, somewhere in there. And that tapers off down towards Bakersfield, but we're still looking about maybe 1 inch in the passes along Interstate 5. All right, here's a look at the forecast for tonight. You're going to see that occlusion move out to sea and things will improve. Temperatures going down. In Texas, we've got the southern disturbance moving eastward. You're going to see precip move out into Texas itself. And we've got this other system moving inland and tracking down into California. So bringing this forward, the GFS indicating some snow breaking out, although this does lean a little bit too cold. So very likely not really any major impacts with that. However, out in the Shasta region, the Sierras, we are expecting quite a bit of precip. So the front slows down for Friday as the next wave approaches, and things will intensify out there in California. Heavy snows coming down Friday night right there in the Sierras. We've got this other wave moving up the East Coast, bringing some rain all the way up to Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh. And there's that Pacific system out there moving into Nevada. Winds really picking up, sustained 35 to 40 knots in southern Nevada. And gradually we get it crossing the Rockies over the weekend and into Oklahoma, where it becomes a dry frontal system. And what we see is mostly cold air advection spilling into the northern plains and some weaker advection down to the south. Another Pacific system moving inland for Monday, and you can just follow along with your favorite area. And most likely the best chances for severe weather, that's going to be on Friday. Remember, we had that 1.5 inch precipitable water coming into the Mississippi River Valley. That's going to link up with that system right there. So initially, not a whole lot of precip. However, as it moves east, it'll get into deeper and deeper moisture, and this is where we may see increasing severe weather risks, possibly all the way up towards the Chicago area. So that'll be the system to watch. And that's all I've got for this edition of Forecast Lab. I'll leave you with some footage in the Texas Hill Country, a nice evening flight from last week, And keep in mind that we do have a Patreon fund to help keep the program going, so consider that or pick up a book at weathergraphics.com. Those are my forecasting titles, and they are very good. I may be a little bit biased. All right, hope you have a great Wednesday evening, and we'll see you back here on Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.